Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome again to another podcast of Harvesting Wisdom. My guests today are Jessica Hauer. I just talked about screaming at Hauer.
You says Al.
Lynette Wagner.
Yeah.
And I would say Wagner, but it's an E. Wagner.
Yeah.
Okay, so both educators. Jessica.
Cut. Let's take that from the top.
I like that. We just had some spontaneity going on. All right, do it again.
Okay, yeah, from the top. Go ahead.
Say it edited. Welcome to another podcast of Harvesting Wisdom. I'm your host, Mike McMahon, and these are my guests today, Jessica Hauer. No, I can't even say it. Hauer. Start it again. You should have left it.
This is the third one today.
All right. He never lets me.
Hauer, you got it right the first time.
I
Hauer.
always mess him up, and we just go through it. This is the first time he's stopping me. It's like a bad thing, a bad omen. Okay.
Start with Al.
Take it away.
Welcome to another podcast of Harvesting Wisdom. I'm your host, Mike McMahon, and my guest today, Jessica Hauer, Lynette Wagner, and both of you are educators. And I'll read a little about your bios to those who are listening. Jessica's career showcases her deep commitment to creating educational environments that enlighten and empower students. You began your journey K through 12 education sector, nurturing young minds with a unique blend of compassion and rigor. Acknowledged the critical role of early education in shaping future leaders and societal contributors, implemented groundbreaking education strategy aimed at bridging learning gaps and fostering a lifelong love for learning among students. Lynette Wagner is the administrator at Valencia Newcomer School, dedicated to academic excellence and enriched programs in arts, athletics, and more, celebrating the opening of a new school with a welcoming message to families, okay? So her educational career launched in the Alhambra Elementary School District 23 years ago. You don't look like you're that old enough to have done that.
It was 28 years ago.
28, a typo.
That's exciting,
Okay.
you know that.
Wow, that's a way. You should have kept it at 23. A district that holds...
Extra 5 years.
Yes,
It's getting closer and
yes.
closer. You hit that 30-year mark.
Yeah,
big
well,
deal.
that's just the beginning, for your next career. But that was also where your children went to school, and now they've moved on and they're in a college setting and working at that, and you're bringing. This says 21 years of teaching experience in grades K through 3, right? So
Yes.
that part's accurate. Okay.
Yes.
And you've transitioned into administration, focusing on student achievement and supportive educational environment in both elementary and junior high settings. Under her leadership, Valencia Newcomer School commits to ensuring English language proficiency, fostering respect, self-discipline among students, providing a safe and nurturing environment, and forming strong home-school partnerships through comprehensive services. Looking ahead, Lynette is enthusiastic about this year, a year filled with growth, learning, community engagement, highlighting the crucial role of parental involvement in fostering education excellence at Valencia Newcomer. Okay, so now that I've gone through all of that, question for you. Is this year over, or is this year the year about to start? Because we're now late in the
end of
year,
this
right?
year, yeah.
So it's more like, how did the year go?
Oh, this year was fabulous, but because we were able to connect with new partnerships this year than we have in the past. So because of new partnerships that we've created and the buy-in that we're getting from our families, and the new transition of students that we received this year, which was higher than we've ever had, we're just real excited to jumpstart the summer professional developments and then moving into next year.
So it's a
strong.
transition in all business, all industry,
All
all
areas.
organizations. When you go from doing the work, right, as a teacher
Yes.
and working directly with the kids to going into management.
Yeah.
And we all know, hey, management is, it's more cultural capital. We can say, hey, we were a principal or whatever, but it's also the idea that now you're affecting more truly with what you're doing.
Yeah. When you're a classroom teacher, you're affecting those 35 students in
Right.
your classroom and their families. When you're an administrator, you move into the school setting, and now you're affecting every child in that
Everything,
classroom.
Yeah. So it's something you probably sat back and you wondered. Well, you're okay.
I'm sorry.
You probably sat back and wondered all those years, why doesn't that principal do this, and how come there's not this, and where's the emotion, where's the drive, and all that. But this is a normal transition. When I started, my degrees were different than when I started in business. But early on, when I started my first company, the landscape company, I worked in the field a lot. And I designed and I built things and I worked directly with the guys and I would be on equipment. And then I slowly moved up into being chief bottle washer and chief babysitter. So part of it is, I have an organization, we get more done, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is I kind of miss doing the actual work.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's almost like you got to retire now to go back into gardening, to do what you actually like to do. But at the same time, I see it. You're affecting more.
Yeah.
And it is something you sat and were like, so does it work? All those things that you looked at from others in front of you, and now you're doing it. You're like,
Well, I have
can
to
implement
tell
this.
you, when I never planned to go into administration, I moved into academic coaching, and that's where my sweet spot was, because I was now supporting teachers that were struggling in the classroom and helping them develop their craft, right? And the administration piece fell into my lap when our superintendent at that time really saw a need to create a newcomer school within our district. And the school that I was supporting had a high refugee immigration population, so he felt that I was a good one to help support the task force that he created.
So that's
at
an
that
actual
time.
name, newcomer school.
Oh, yes.
That's a type of school.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
tell me, what's a newcomer school? Is that for
It is a
people
school.
new to the state, new to the
Yes,
country?
new to
Is
the
that what
United
it's about?
States. Yes, it is.
Okay, wow.
It's their first experience. We say it's a soft landing at our school, so it's their first. We have the honor
You're the bridge.
of having their first experience in an American school system be at our school.
So multiple languages.
Oh,
How many
multiple
languages do you speak?
Oh, I don't speak any. Now I
You speak
I
this
have a
one.
little
You're talking to me.
Spanish. I have a little Swahili. I'm learning. The kids are really good at supporting me during our lunchtime.
How about
not
teachers?
there.
Do you get teachers who are
So I have teachers and I have staff members that I strategically place at our school.
that come in?
Yes, that speak multiple languages.
Okay, and
And
that's
they're
a big help.
fascinating.
But the reality is, it's kind of total immersion to learning for these kids, because they're coming in and you're teaching
Yes.
same topics, but you're teaching in English, and they
Yes.
just have to kind of struggle. But
Use
it's
a lot of
but it's a faster.
strategies.
It's the good news is it's like ripping a Band-Aid off, right? It
is.
You're
In a safe environment.
you're moving quick, yeah.
Right.
So, and then Jessica, you were a teacher
Yeah.
for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
20 years in the classroom.
then you're doing a whole bunch of other things. What are you
Yeah,
doing now?
I'm also an administrator in a district. I'm at a district office.
Right.
I'm
You're
at
in
Cartwright.
Cartwright, yeah.
Yeah. I've had other administrative roles in other districts. Also working at Arizona State University, so at ASU. My passion is really. I started out as a special education teacher, but I have this degree in environmental science. I've always, really been drawn to looking at our environmental problems as a society, studying them, trying to find solutions, really looking at sustainability. But as an educator, when I started teaching, I didn't have a teaching credential. And so I decided, well, I better get that and learn how to be. I was teaching. I was an emergency cert with a sub-certificate. And I chose special education because I really wanted to understand all the different aspects of meeting students' needs.
And that's
you
a
can do
challenge,
that.
right? That's
yeah. And so I spent about 6 years teaching in special education before I transitioned more to the sciences.
Okay.
I've taught high school, middle school, been an administrator in both a high school district and in K-8 districts. And I really fell in love with working at a university when I had an opportunity to work in education outreach at ASU in the STEM field. And just the resources that the university has for the classroom teacher was why I stuck around. I loved seeing what professors were doing when they would receive a large research grant and they had to have an educational outreach component. They had to have some way to support teacher work in K-12 or work in the community to make sure the community understood how they're using taxpayers' money, really. So that was fascinating to me, and I really could see that whole K to college continuum. And in STEM education, I think that's just critical. You really need to be able to support our kindergarten teachers to introduce STEM and our high school teachers to stay proficient in all of the ways technology is changing our society.
Yeah.
And so now one of your many part-time jobs is working at UFE, at Urban Farming Education, and you're getting a lot done in a short amount of time because you're still an administrator, you're still at ASU, but now you're taking us with Peter and Kim and now a whole team of people are doing a lot of different things. Why don't you explain it? But Peter and Kim take those Arizona standards, start a program up, and then you make the program live, right? You do so talk about that.
Yeah, what's funny, a backstory, Lynette and I worked together in Alhambra, and I was working in sustainability education as an administrator and met Lynette. She was going to start this newcomer school. And I said, oh, that's amazing. What can I do to help? She's like, well, I would like to start a garden. I said, oh, fantastic. She's like, that sounds like something you should know about.
Yeah.
With your STEM education.
With your STEM and your
science
so.
and environmental
science
science. And I was like,
sustainability
sure.
piece of it.
Sure, I can know that.
Right.
I'll just learn it. So we just accept. I had not run a school garden before, and it sounds easy. We see this with teachers all the time.
Sure,
Him and Peter see it. It's great. Let's just go to the school. We're going to tell you how to put seeds in soil, how to water them, and
See you
then
later.
how to harvest them, and that's it.
Right.
And and so we've done that. We have harvested crops that we grew from seed without much knowledge. We'd have master gardeners support us.
Yes.
And I've done that with other schools.
Nature was working with you.
Yes.
It was.
It would rain. We're like, thank goodness.
Well,
Things
and we
wouldn't
also
die.
learned,
We were
we
like,
invited
thank goodness.
a lot of my parents there too, so they were coming. We were learning from them.
Sure.
Because the rationale behind having a school garden was so that they had that connection from their home. Most of our families in their home countries had gardens.
Oh, yeah.
That's where they, cultivated all their.
Yeah, we've separated ourselves a little more here in the U.S. and in the industrial areas than a lot of countries, especially if you're talking Senegal and places in Africa. They're tied to that land, and that
They
whole
are.
process.
They don't
And
know about processed
that disconnect
foods.
is like weird, right?
Yeah, they don't even know what a can opener is, right? So keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No,
but we were so
absolutely not.
excited. So we were just learning that
Yes.
first year together.
And there were some partners, people wanted to come out. They wanted to help us.
Right.
But constantly, Lynette would ask me, okay, my teachers are ready for the lessons, the lesson plans. It's just a critical part of teaching, especially when you're teaching something
Yeah,
new.
you have to have a format, right?
Format,
Those
the
kids will eat
alignment.
you alive if
Yes.
if you walk into a classroom and you don't have a plan for the
You
day.
need
you're
to
in
have a
trouble.
plan.
Yeah.
It's not
You
gonna
can only ad lib so much.
Yeah. And so going back to Kim and Peter and supporting their work, Kim she is an amazing natural teacher. You watch her with a group of teachers in a room, you've seen her. She's so easy to gravitate to, and she just, that excitement for gardening, you feel that, and educators love that. And Peter has a ton of experience in STEM education. But Joe Roselle reached out and said, hey, we're just missing a little something. We need to get it written into a lesson plan. I think you have experience with that. Can you just help us just watch what they're doing and help us just get it into that lesson plan so that we can really support the number of teachers that we want to? If they can't come to Kim's PD, or if they come to the PD and they get back to the classroom, they need that lesson plan to follow that presentation. So that's really what I'm trying to do with Kim and Peter.
And so now that structure, I'm going to go through the structure. Kim
Yeah.
and Peter created 5 programs, 2 of which are complete and handed to you, and you're just about done with lesson plans for those first 2.
Yeah.
And I think, and you're working with Hasiel to create lab projects and events, and
Yeah.
or no, what was the other one? The
composting, the composting lessons.
we talked about doing activities.
Oh, yes.
Different
yeah.
activities and such, but which include composting and all that. But so that structure is Kim and Peter have those 5. One at a time gets launched to you. It takes a long time to create all those lesson plans. Now you got a team of people doing it, so that'll accelerate. But
Yeah.
so it starts with them with that program, standards to curriculum, and professional development, and then you're taking that to give them the tools to actually do something for like a whole year, right? And
Right.
and right now it's grouped for five programs, so it's preschool, kindergarten.
Yep.
Then it's
First,
first, to second, okay, and then
Third through
through
six.
6.
Yep.
7, 8, 9.
7, 8, 9. 7 through 12.
7
it's
through 12.
planned.
No, I think they have
7, 8, 9,
they
and
have
we haven't done the
a 5th
high
one.
school.
Yeah, he's got that in the works. But so you're in that process, and that's a product that we'll hand to all schools in Arizona, and then we can also tie in national standards to that and allow, hand that out to anybody in any other state to follow that same program. So that's kind of cool. How does it work in reality for you? How many of your teachers, have we taken any teachers through professional development at the newcomer school yet?
We're just starting. All of this partnership just happened recently, where I was introduced to Joe, and then he came out just to analyze and look at our garden to even see where we were at. So we're at the very beginning stages.
And did we do any of the work on the garden? I thought
Yes,
we
we've
did.
had 2 Saturdays already
Wow,
where
yeah.
we've just gone to kind of assess it, clean it up, because it was thriving before COVID, and I hate to use that because everybody says it all the time. Once COVID went through, and we were one of the districts that shut down the longest in Arizona, so our superintendent just didn't feel like it was time, so we were shut down for well over a year. When classes were coming back, he just didn't feel ready yet. So our garden suffered during that time, and then it went into summer. And then by the time we came back, it was just
Biology gone.
everything
You know how it
was, yeah.
The
So-
grass, you know how it is. Bermuda grass.
Bermuda grass came through. The weeds were coming up, and so what I chose to do is to use ESSER funds for outdoor seeding and coverage, so that when we did start the garden up again, we would have some kind of tools to start using it as an educational space.
So
now we're at that level.
Cool. Describe the garden itself, and we'll probably flash the garden up on this.
Oh, I hope
Joe's
so.
little remedial design that he did.
It takes up almost the whole west side of our campus. It is. It's.
And what are the elements
been
of what are the elements of the garden? And then talk about how, with professional development through the lesson plans that you're doing, and the newcomer school is basically a primary school, right?
It is. Well, it's a kindergarten through 8th grade.
8th grade. Okay.
Yeah, so kindergarten through 8th
So
grade.
so what are the components of the garden that you picked? Because you can pick and choose based on space and everything.
So at first we were just we had beds that the kids created through a grant that we received through the Arizona Cardinals, and they were just creating garden beds, and each class had their own bed, and they were planting what they chose based off of what was seasonal, and we knew that could be planted. Now what we've done is Joe actually hired an architect, right, to come out and analyze it, and he's he's telling us all the different spaces that we can have. So I wanted like a butterfly, like serenity, dragonfly area for kids to go for SEL type moments. So we have that in the making. We have an actual teaching learning space that's being created right now, like a patio style, with chalkboard paint to be able for teachers to be able to teach on. The roses are going to be a component. Loofahs are going to be a component. We just put in sunflowers, and the kids, actually our garden club just harvested our first sunflower seeds last Monday, and they were just tickled. They just were so excited. And then we want a place for we have cabbage that's starting to grow, so we want cabbage and radishes and corn and all those things that we know that we can hopefully.
Rose garden. I think you have a little
Rose in the front. Yeah, the rose garden.
The rose came from Tyler Francis.
Oh my goodness!
Roses,
and
right?
they're so excited about those.
And they came
They're
bare root
Beautiful.
and-
Yep. They're soaking. They're still soaking in containers right now.
Well, okay.
So
Gotta
we're
get 'em in the
excited to
ground.
Yep. We're working on.
How about a
that
couple
should be
trees? Do you
happening.
have a couple?
We just got
trees?
trees planted, citrus trees that are planted. So those are just barely starting to get their roots in there.
And so what lessons would you've got K through?
So what's interesting about Lynette is she's one of our few administrators that has attended our Plot of Sunshine ED.
okay.
And she brought one of her instructional aides
Yes.
that's planning to have some hands-on type camp programming in the summer for students.
Okay,
So we're gonna have a summer camp this summer.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have the conference coming. How
Yep.
many teachers do you think want to be involved with?
So right now I have 2 slotted, just because this summer we have a lot of professional development for our teachers in general. Our district is offering. What's really great about our district is that this year our summer camps are being run by all classified staff. They're giving classified staff an opportunity to get paid over the summer because they don't. So we're training them to run camps. So because of that, our certified staff members are not. They're usually counting on that. Several of them are counting on that money to teach summer school. So to counteract that, our district is offering several professional development opportunities that are paid
Oh, that's good.
throughout the summer. So because of that, there are many classes being held on those days.
So
So
the
they're going to that.
So the odd thing is we're coming close to the end of the school year. I don't know when this episode will play, probably later in the summer, but you're coming close to the school year. You got to plant stuff, but there's not a lot of people necessarily around to monitor at least the quick crops, the lettuce, the broccoli, all the
Right.
the veggies and stuff like
Right.
that. But your trees set up on timers and things like that, and the rows, all the bushes and things. So, what's the process of finishing the garden? And again, and then I'm going to go back to you. What lesson plans? How does it start working? Because the garden will be built,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
that's when the real work starts. It's the actual teaching of these, of this curricula through the lessons, right? So.
Well, I'm excited. Last night we had a parent meeting. We have a parent meeting once a month, and I took them out to the garden. We had about 55, and I always pump up the garden every parent meeting, every time we get together, because it's so important, and I want them to see it and know that it's theirs. It's not ours. And so we walked out there, and I encouraged them to make sure that they continue to connect with our parent volunteer coordinator so that they can help support sustaining it over the summer. I want our parents to be a part of it. They live in our community. And when camps are over in June, we've got the second half of June and all of July that we've got to figure out a way to keep it sustainable. So if we can get our parents, I'm on campus all summer, my custodian's on campus, if I can get her to help be a part of that and get our parents on campus, and work it and keep it sustainable, it's doable.
I hear it's
too.
about that survival, and
In
it's
the
really
summer it
July,
is.
August, September.
And
that
yeah,
thought,
but at least we're back on campus at that point, and we can
and you
help
have to
sustain it.
start re-gardening in September, really,
Yes.
because of that 90-day season, which will take you into, your Christmas breaks or
Right.
whatever, the
Right.
winter breaks. So how does it work? When do the lesson plans start, and what
So
grades?
There's several things that you can do. So our plot of sunshine, which is where we started with Kim and Peter's work, turning that that program
Through to
into
sixth
real,
grade. Mhm.
yeah, third through sixth grade through into lesson plans. And what's great about that curriculum is it really guides the teacher through weekly activities for 7 weeks. But there's some pre-teaching that you can do. You can have students be a part of identifying where they want to garden on their campus. So even if they have an established garden space, like at Lynette's campus, at Valencia Newcomer School, they still can have some choice. They can wander around the campus and say, there, I want to try to garden there, but the lessons will take them through what makes an ideal garden situation based on the crop that you're going to grow. So there's a lot of choice, and you can walk the students through all of that before you have to plant. Well, what seeds? Getting them to read seed packets, getting them to understand where all those local seeds, are they native seeds? Are they going to do well? Is full sun in Arizona full sun they're talking about on the back of a seed packet that's also sold in Minnesota?
Right.
We know, right? These are the things that we know that the kids don't know,
How
and the
can they test
teachers
the
don't really
ground?
know.
How can
Yes.
they test the dirt? to
Soil
see if the
testing.
soil is okay.
So the
All of those
preliminary
things.
things that's kind of the critical learning part, right?
Absolutely.
Rather than just watching a plant or
Right.
taking a weed out or harvesting it.
Yeah.
But also big parts of it. But so does it, how do you, but I'm trying to figure out how does it incorporate, because you haven't done it yet, right? So this will be
Yeah,
the
this
question.
is exciting.
You're going to have two teachers that are going to be going through the professional development. Will other teachers have access to the garden and maybe some of the lesson plans, and they can take kids through it?
They absolutely will. This just because again, the partnership was created later in the year, and this just got started recently. And with everything else that was already set for those teachers, I have many that are disappointed and want to start now. So I know that's what's so exciting about next year, because I know once we get through all these little professional developments that we have to, or that we're offering, I shouldn't say have to, that we're offering for teachers to get compensated and build their craft in the classroom. Once that's over, we're going to really focus on getting our garden up. And they all are committed. They all know how important it is to our parents and to our students.
Yeah, it's a connector.
So
it's a
it
venue.
is.
It's a social venue.
It
it's
is.
It's a way of getting the kids, to take that nervous energy or that bored energy, whatever you want to call it, and
Well, and
go
it's
outside.
familiar.
Right.
It's something that
To what they
connects
do,
them to something that they do.
So with your school, would you look at certain crops from certain parts of the world and say, what do you eat over
We
there?
talked about that. I would love to incorporate that if we could. I think that's going to be later on. I really want to get good at being able to understand how to garden and how to sustain our garden. And then I think that will be the next phase. As much as I want to jump into it, I want to make sure we we understand the lesson planning, we understand the execution of the lessons prior to
Sure.
The planting calendar is something that we've discussed.
Yeah.
With Lynette's, campus.
That's an
is-
important one.
It really
important.
is.
It
And
really
I
makes
want
a
them to
difference.
get good at it before we start moving
Right,
into
understanding that.
Yeah.
And you have, it just takes time.
It does.
Everything doesn't have to be, something that comes in a magic pill, right? And
Right.
farming is an ecological process that has been going on 10,000 years, and it mimics what biology is normally doing in an ecosystem or environment. So and that's the cool part about the training for both the teachers and the students, is to understand, at that primary level all the way through how it all connects. And then how do you tie in STEM? We call it STEAM now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
STEAM because the arts, right?
Right.
And there's kids in the classroom that are just naturally artistic that want to draw and want to perform or whatever it is. So you got to have that outlet for them as well in their creativity. But how do you start that process with the STEM? How do you start that curiosity?
I think the great thing about the garden is when students walk in, if they're not familiar with growing their own food, they're naturally curious about all of it. They want to understand, okay, if I put this seed in, what's going to happen? When's it going to happen? the waiting game begins. They know a seed will give them something, a plant, but they don't really know what's that plant going to look like. Most of them don't recognize or know what a plant's going to look like,
Sure.
like a bean, versus an eggplant versus a pepper versus a tomato. So there's so much curiosity about the whole process, and how long is it going to take, and how much do you need to water it, and when is it ready? When will I know I can harvest? And so that's really great for STEM, because what we want students to do in STEAM, we want them to ask questions, to be curious, but then to take them through a process of how do you answer those questions? What's a scientific method, and how does that relate to gardening and growing? So that they can learn how to notebook, how they can make observations, take notes on their observations, and then ask questions when something doesn't go right. And if you're working in a school garden, I can tell you what, 99% of the time, you're going to find a problem. Either you overwater, underwater, too much sun, not enough sun, someone knocks it over, a pest comes. With the garden process,
Sure.
when you're just a novice, you're going to have some challenges, and that's okay. I remember one time working with a custodian and with a grounds crew, and they were like, "Why are you investing all this time in the garden? It's just going to die." I'm like, well, plants do die. They do have a life cycle.
All of us do.
Yeah.
And that's all
Why are we
right.
investing in people.
Right. But if you let
Yeah, why teach a kid? He'll be dead someday.
that doesn't even.
the
I
first
can't wrap my head around that.
But the first time you watch a plant, when you take a seed and you foster it and you keep it alive and you let it live to its adult life and you harvest and you still keep it alive after the harvest and watch what happens next, and you watch a plant naturally reseed itself, and the next year you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't plant arugula this year, but I know that's arugula now because I've already grown it.
Sure.
And here it is. And then when you see, why is it over there? Oh, because of the birds.
So
Bury
what are
those. All the wind.
Yeah.
So-
all that
It's
pollination.
just-
I got questions.
It's great.
I did visit the site, and I looked at Joe's remedial design, and but I do have questions. Do you have a cafeteria, or do the kids bring their own food?
We have a cafeteria.
So this is another part, maybe a little advanced, not first year or whatever, but no, the concept of, let's say you're growing 3 or 4 plants or 10 plants or 20 plants, whatever. Once that plant is ready to harvest, the idea would be to design a day or a week's worth of food menu revolving around that plant. So if it's cucumber with salt or in a sandwich, or if it's microgreens in a sandwich or in a whatever, or if you're growing fruit, taking that fruit off, but then having all the kids have that fruit for the day, understanding, even though you might only have 2 or 3 plants, and you might have 500 kids, you can still, every kid understands this is what that plant looked like, this is how long it took, here's that particular thing, and here's how you can use it in your, and have, because I don't even know with our program if because that's not really, that connectivity is the kind of the next evolution, right? It's not, it's not part of a lesson plan because the teacher's not teaching it, but it really is that confirmation of taste and of understanding, okay, this is, oh, wow. And what was kind of cool years ago, we had a fundraiser for the foster, one of the foster groups that handled most of the foster kids in Arizona. And one of the kids, because the kids worked with chefs and they performed, they created meal plans for the event. And then the kids would come up and talk. And some of the stuff was kind of shocking. One of the kids, I remember, said, I never knew food came from the ground.
Yeah.
And I never knew you could actually eat.
Yes.
Like, I didn't know what a vegetable was.
Yes.
Because the food that they ate was processed foods, mostly boxed foods. So they didn't quite get that or that connection. So I think tying in the cafeteria is kind of a critical thing. It could be cucumber day. It could be, broccoli day or onion day or whatever, but that's part of it. But let's talk about your design of a garden. What's in it? Is there composting, vermicomposting? Is it plants that you're chasing? Are you going to grow in like a large batch of things, or are you going to grow as many different things as possible, or what's your plan? Because every farmer has a plan, right?
Yeah.
Every year you get,
Maybe the students are going to design it. They're
Right.
the teachers in the lesson plans. That's what we're trying to get.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to get that. We call it student choice and
And
student
ownership.
voice. Yeah.
Okay.
I really want them
But
to own it.
are you composting, or what are you doing? What are the components of the
Yeah.
garden?
So again, we're so new. So I mean, this whole thing is
Yeah,
so
you
new
haven't
to us.
started yet, but is that part
but
of
I
the
would
plan?
love. We definitely want to compost for sure.
Okay.
That is
So soil's a
already,
part of it, yeah.
so right.
Yep.
And then
So I think, what's interesting, and I'm going to flash back for a minute. When we talked about Valencia first starting to garden, when they had a grant from
Don't mind me,
ADE.
I'm going to eat what
Yeah.
yes,
The
we
first time we planted,
we were doing all that. We had 1 million radishes.
yes. Okay.
and
So
carrots.
we,
And
luckily,
we had so many radishes and carrots.
we're like, radishes seem to have a quick growth cycle. They seem to be right. You can harvest them
They're a
quick.
30-day cycle.
Yes.
My goodness.
So that we said, let's just start with radishes. And we let the students
Yes.
plant. And we gave them as many seed packets as they wanted.
Oh my God.
And we just put them in the ground. So
you had a
imagine,
radish garden.
We did.
yes, but it wasn't raised. It was,
in the ground.
the dry dirt that you see in an abandoned lot in a school.
They
We
watered
just
it
threw
though, at
them.
least?
Yes.
Yeah, we watered it
Yeah.
really well, and it was not monsoon. We had a lot of rain. It was early enough in the school year that we still would get those like September rains, and we didn't have an irrigation system, so we would just let the hose run,
The kids would water.
and they'd water.
every
Flood
kid.
irrigated.
All the
Flood
classrooms.
irrigated.
Yes.
It was amazing. The moment we saw it, we're like, oh my gosh, first just the sprout up. We're like, well, they could all be weeds. We could have just brought open a.
You don't know
Who
until
knows?
you
Then we
recognize
knows?
your
No
plant.
idea what a
The teachers
radish
were so
looks like.
excited,
Yeah.
and then we started talking, and we didn't interrupt you, but then we did kind of what you were talking about. We would blindfold them, do these activities, and we'd take them the grocery store beets, or I'm sorry, not
Radishes,
beets,
yeah.
and carrots, and the ones from the garden, and they would have to taste test and vote on which one they liked.
Hundreds of radishes.
And-
it was the most successful
I don't think we
radish
had-
I'd
I
ever
don't think
seen.
we had one student that
Hundreds.
picked the store-bought one. Every single child.
It was great.
It was
Wow.
for that, and the carrots too.
Yeah.
That we had that.
They were
You can
so
taste that
flavorful.
freshness,
They
right?
could taste
Yes.
it, and they all loved it.
So you can do a single crop like that. It just depends on what you're trying to teach right
Yeah.
at
Right.
that time, and
and we need to get there,
Right.
and that's why I'm so excited for next year, because there's so many opportunities.
Do you have the Ready Go Garden system in that?
Well, they
is that
have-
part of
they've
the plan?
since-
That's going to be in there.
They have some garden beds. So after that radish, amazing radish, lucky success.
We knew we could do
We got
it.
partners. We're like, okay, but we should probably, I don't know that this soil is going to grow everything. And we really probably should have contained beds and some real soil. So over, probably a 2-year span, we worked with some partners, some donations from the Diamondbacks, from Arizona Cardinals, and built beds and an irrigation system.
Yes.
But all of that was pre-COVID. So a lot of that had to be, that Bermuda grass and all of those weeds that had since
Modified, sure.
had,
Yeah.
So I think they had to tear out a lot of that, kind of move the garden beds, tear all of that out.
Yeah, and that
Put
was a
another
parent day
layer.
where they came and just worked all.
So that's how far you've gotten. You've cleaned up so far.
Yeah.
we have.
And
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, the design that Joe had there had a bag system, and
They
so
didn't have, and I've never done that before, so
That'll be great.
I was fascinated with that. I had no idea.
so that the idea, and this is probably part of professional development, but I don't know if Peter and Kim they're doing this or not. But the idea is there's different categories of things that you grow, right? Of vegetables and of fruits. You have seasonal. You have what we call quick crops, which
Right.
are crops that grow within a 90-day period, right? And you have cut and come again, which is lettuce. So that's a quick crop that after 30 days you can strip it and it'll grow back and strip it again and
Right.
one more time. a lot of times you do companion planting for different reasons, but we'll put radish on the sides of the bag because that you can grow 2 or 3 times the radish while you're waiting for
The bag.
broccoli to grow in the middle or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
but that's one thing, and that's the use of the bag because the bag is really about 5 inches deep, and it supports the root system of those quick crops very, very well. Now we've grown 12-foot corn with it and watermelon, but it's not really the correct use of that
Okay.
bag. So that's where your planters come in,
Yeah.
putting soil in the planters. Now you can put in your
Carrots.
perennials.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can put in a root vegetable like a carrot because they can go a little deeper in that planter. Or you can do an herb planter that's going to stay for a long time. And or you can plant right in your landscape things like rosemary and roses and citrus trees and things like that. So that's a big part of the deal too. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish in the garden, and there's so many different things.
Right.
Do you want to teach lessons on photosynthesis? Do you want to teach lessons on, the bugs that are in the soil and the microorganisms with the microscope we
Right.
have? And do you want to,
So fabulous.
or do you want to learn how to garden? But the whole idea is from grade 3 through grade 8, which is what you got to know from kindergarten through grade 8, that progression should be at a point, and it's up to you to decide. But if children stay in there that long, they should actually know how to do their own garden when they leave. That could be an objective, right?
Right.
And why would they do that? To grow their own food at home, to have fresh food, and or to know how to use that food or that what they're growing as part of their recipe. So that's kind of that progression that I think you can do throughout. But we answered the question when I first started putting in gardens. People asked, "Well, why do I want to put in a garden?" And I was like, "Well, to me, I knew, but it was like, well." But I had to answer that. What would a person want in a school setting? It's pretty basic. It's pedagogical. It's learning. And there's so many different things to learn and so many different ways to learn.
Yeah.
But
So
that's
many standards could be met in the garden.
right. But what most people, if you're putting it in your house, you're having it for sustenance. You want to eat it.
Right.
So if you learn all these different lessons on, how to seed bank or how to do this and how to do that, by the time you're done, you could put a garden in your yard, and it's not alien to you. You understand all of that, and that's kind of the goal, and that's why we start with young kids, because you do have to have a patience. The average person, and I'm probably as guilty as anybody, you decide to put a garden at your house, and the first thing you do is, well, I need to build a planter, and I got to do this or whatever.
Right.
And you go, and it's the first weekend you're hitting your thumb and a hammer, and you finally build this rickety-looking
Right.
planter box, or maybe you bought a real expensive one and you put it in your yard,
Right.
and then you're like, what do I put in there? Do I just shovel dirt in there, or do I go over to a box store and buy product? And there's all these different products, and most of them at those stores are not real high quality. The product that they have, and it depends on what you're growing and everything else. So then they do that, and then they plant something maybe, and then they go on vacation for a weekend, and everything dies because they didn't know irrigation. They didn't know irrigation, and it's like so all of these things, right?
Right.
But if the kids learn at this age about what they're doing, and they have a curiosity, and they pick it up, and it's like there's an old Buckminster Fuller saying that's give a person a tool. There's no such thing as teachers. Just give a person a tool, and then they figure it out how to do it. And that's kind of what these gardens are about to me. It's it's concrete learning. And then it allows them with their curiosity to want more, and that's when it becomes more abstract. That's when they look at the science behind it or the theories behind some of the things, and that's the kind of the cool part of the garden. But it's a process, right? And if it's you doing it at your house for the first time, you got points of failure. Number one, you got to put the boxes in or whatever they think they need. Then it's like, I got to put some kind of soil. And then it's like, I got to plant, and they don't know what time of the year to plant, so they plant it anyway.
Right.
Then it's like, how do I
That's
water
something I
it?
had to learn.
And then it's
doesn't
like,
grow.
then it's like, oh my God,
Weeds.
this thing's a pain. Oh, and it's
And
weeds.
then it dies.
Yeah,
It's the wrong
because-
season. Then you have aphids. I did that. I couldn't believe
So
it.
that's the thing. So it's
Right.
like, you know what? I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Or I'm going to hire somebody to do it, which is kind of like, okay, well, then why not just go to the store and
Counteractive.
Yeah.
buy your
Right.
food, right? So
Go and-
the idea is to learn these things
Right.
early on and to make them like second nature to them, so that it's a real simple process. And when the time they're done, but that has to be the commitment of the school
Right.
and of the teachers,
Yes.
and it has to be our capacity building that we perform with the lesson plan. So the lesson plans are kind of lesson plans for that plant, for that day, for that grade level. But what we talk about was kind of overarching principles of agriculture, understanding some of the basic things, so photosynthesis or soil or whatever. And I think it's cool to have that in your programming, and that's kind of what we hope to see. And
Yes.
we'll continue. I
We're
guess
excited.
we'll do a little bit this year with you, and then the beginning of next year we'll
year's
get it
when we'll
launched.
take
By
it up.
then,
Yeah.
we'll have.
Well, and I really want to
lesson
work with
plans.
Jessica too, and understanding, like you were saying, exactly what our desire is. Our kids come with a lot of background knowledge, and we only have them for 1 year.
Oh,
And then they're off to their home schools. It's a transition. It's just
this
enough.
is so they
to
could
get
come
them-
into the 6th grade
They could.
or
and
to the
then-
7th grade
Yes,
or the
sir.
1st grade.
Yes.
but they're only there for 1 year.
Yes.
Oh, this is a
one
new
academic.
challenge. I love it.
Yes. And so, what is the most important, depending on the grade level, depending on the age of that child, of that classroom? What do we want them to get out of the garden experience?
Got it.
Right? Based off of what they come with already.
doing, sure.
What country, what region of the world they come from would determine how much background knowledge they
So
have.
has a newcomer
So-
got children that will go to schools all over the valley, or
yeah.
just in your district?
Well, we naturally transition them to schools within our district because we're a choice school. So we accept all of our students throughout all of our boundaries, or our boundaries throughout Alhambra.
And what's the district? It's
But
Alhambra, right?
Alhambra. But
Okay.
we accept students outside of our district. We just don't provide transportation for them.
Okay.
But they naturally transition to our home schools. But if they are outside of our district, then we help transition them to their home schools.
So our goal will be to go in, penetrate into more schools in Alhambra.
Yes.
So that it's.
But we want them to
They go
with
from
the
one to the
knowledge.
next, to the next, to the next.
Yeah.
But the idea is that what we're trying to produce. We want a school in or garden in every school, a STEM garden,
Yes.
STEAM garden.
I want our
And
kids
every
to go
school
to their
in-
home school and say, "Why don't you have a garden?"
Right. We want
What
to do
can we
that in
to
every
start
school in
with?
Arizona.
Yes. Yeah.
And we want
what we
the
want.
lesson plans to be fairly simple and the goals of the garden. But it's a commitment. It's not
we are
something
committed.
early. It's a 10, 20 year commitment. But
Yep.
I think if it's done right and we do our job of building the
Capacity.
tools
Yeah.
that can help, then I think it's doable. So look forward to seeing more of what you're doing.
Me too. I want to do this again this time next year,
Yeah,
and really
excellent.
discuss, see the progress from.
And we're putting
today.
a couple of greenhouses in. So we're in we have a demonstration garden now at our office with all the different components that you could do, give you ideas. But we're going to put a greenhouse in where we'll let students, if you can get students to come over, or we can do it at your
That'd be a great field
office. We'll take.
That'd be
We've
a
been
great
talking
field
about
trip.
the field
great.
trips.
We could do that.
I hope Joe's listening to this.
I told him it'll
We've got
be
tax
great.
credit money for field trips, so.
So we want to. But
Student
we want you.
settings.
We want
But
each
if you haven't
kid.
done your taxes yet, tax
Each-
credit.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, we got to put a plug in.
Gotta put a plug
Put a
in.
seed into these things over the winter while you're in winter break,
Mm-hmm.
and grow starts, and then take those starts and then put them into these bag systems,
Yes.
or into the planters, depending on what you're doing. So they start from seed propagation all the way through. So okay. So plugs, quick plugs. I'm going to wrap up.
Yeah.
What do we want to plug?
Well, I think the summer conference is
Okay.
going to be a great opportunity. So
And that's for teachers.
it's for teachers, for educators, and for students, high school students. I think Joe's looking for university students.
And that's going to
too.
be held at GCU, I think, right? Is that
Yeah, Joe gives the
Guess we got
thumbs
that
up. I
like
think he was still pending.
great?
He
They're
said
great. They're
about it.
great
Yeah,
partners.
I think it's going to be
GCU
a
is really a community-based school, so
great.
that's
yeah.
great.
And they've been doing garden work for a long time.
Yeah.
They've
We
supported
gave them.
Carol Peck's garden within
I think
Alhambra.
we brought over soils for them for their big. They have big planters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're doing stuff, but
So the
that's a big
summer
thing.
conference will be great because it's an opportunity for teachers from Cartwright District, from Alhambra, from all over the valley to come together and talk about, their passion for gardening, but their barriers to getting started or their barriers to sustaining it. And
So that's our
to look at
first
the
hump in the
curriculum.
summertime, and then for you, it's going to be what's the plug? What's the getting more parents involved or getting
and more community partnerships to help
There you
support
go.
with.
Perfect.
We'd love to revamp our irrigation system. It's makeshift, if you will, and we would really like to
get some
to
people.
get some people to
help
do
that.
that. And
Yeah.
and some shade. We're looking at some shade structures throughout.
We need shade in Arizona.
Yeah, but
Simple as
especially
that.
in the area where we would like to do some instructional within our garden.
Okay, great.
So,
All right.
love
Well,
that.
all of you have heard that. If you're in any of those industries and you can help or just want to do a
Come by
donation,
and visit.
Yeah, come
by
on.
and visit. And
So great. Well, I appreciate my guests today. I thank you for coming, Jessica Hauer.
There you go.
Wow,
You
that's
got
a
it
tough
right,
one.
Mike.
Lynette Wagner.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
coming, and we will do another podcast
I would love that.
6 months or 12 months
Yes,
from now and
see-
see
check our
how
progress.
far we've gone.
Check our
Yeah.
All right.
progress.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.